Hi everyone, Joe March here, also known as Sorcerer, and today is a day for celebration because I got a job! Woo! For those of you who followed me for a long time, you know I've been unemployed for a while, 6 months and 2 days to be exact, which is actually right on the average right now for how long it takes people in the tech sector to get a job. I remember when it took about 2 months to turn around. That ain't the way shit works anymore, fellas. Anyway, I'm gainfully employed again, making money and no longer living off my savings, so I'm a happy man about that. Being unemployed for 6 months while I did spend most of that time job searching, it gave me a lot of time also to work on my spiritual practice, and I feel like I've grown a lot more than I had previously in the same amount of time. So I've had quite a number of experiences. Unfortunately, most of those experiences are very personal. I haven't had anything I felt like talking about. I have said, if I had something that I wanted to relay, that I would relay it. And I just have not felt that drive to make videos during this time period. I have been putting all my information that I experience in a journal, and that journal is over 100 pages now because it has just been some wild and cool shit. But a lot of it is very, me-centered, so nothing that has made me go, hey, I need to jump on here and tell everyone what's going on. I guess maybe a better way to explain that is that I have revisited a lot of old concepts, going through the process again, and have experienced them in a new way. And so if I was to go on here and start to explain these concepts, it would sound like I was just repeating old things I said, but the way in which I've experienced it is deeper now, so for me, I understand it better than when I would have said it before. But a lot of the stuff has turned out exactly as how I've explained it here before. It's just that I have this deeper understanding of it, and I really can't put it into words more than that. It's almost like a lot of it I understood in pieces separately before, but this 6 months has been about taking all those pieces and bringing them together. Even things like the Path of the Gods, as I was calling it, which I think is a bad name for it now, has really been about learning about the many faces of the eternity, as opposed to this, separate beings and things like that. It has become an experience of understanding the greater all based on understanding the many facets of reality, the self, etc. Another big thing that I've gone into is understanding the different elements and how they combine to make up everything, how the elements interlink and rely on each other, require each other in order to exist at all, as a form of understanding how all is one and yet all can be viewed as separate. I guess the biggest thing, if I had to pick something that happened that would be interesting to talk about, would be that I finally understand why different practices call the HGA, or the Holy Guardian Angel. I finally get the reason that you wouldn't just call it the higher self like I was doing, and it's because there's this other quality to it that's near impossible to describe without sounding like I just had some kind of psychotic break, because I experienced what people would talk about as knowledge and conversation with the Holy Guardian Angel. Although that had happened to me before, I just didn't call it that. But what I've experienced now, more recently, is something I would call transformation into the HGA, becoming more of your true self. And that experience has showed me that what I would call the higher self, the HGA as they call it, feels like becoming something beyond your own body. It is hard to explain if you haven't experienced it. And so there isn't really new news there. Again, there's not a video worth of data to talk about with that, because I have experienced what it feels like to experience this outside of yourselfness that goes along with being that. But I can't give that to someone else. If you've experienced it, you'll be like, oh, I know what he's talking about. I'm glad he got to experience that. If you haven't experienced it, you're just going to be like, that just sounds like you took drugs or something, which I didn't. And I could see how drugs might help you experience that. But what I experienced does match what a lot of people have experienced when they talk about having DMT trips and the things like that. I've experienced this very weird, otherworldly existence, which has, to my mind, made me feel that it's obvious that we don't exist within this body. And I don't know how to express that, because it's obvious in the moment that you experience it, beyond doubt. But then you come back into this form, and it's just, there's no words for why you know it. And so I have experienced seeing this thing that you would call the HGA, that if you're on the left-hand path, you might call your guardian demon. I would call these things the same thing. the daemon, the higher self. These are all words for the same thing. But I have experienced seeing what it looks like to me and understanding that what I'm seeing is my reflection of the eternity. So in other words, everything that exists is a reflection of the eternity, but through varying lenses. We've talked about this with the gods before, that the gods are just different versions of the eternity, but seen through different lenses, metaphorically. We are the same thing. We are the eternity reflecting itself. But when you can see that reflection in front of you, that's the HGA. When you can see what you're reflecting, you can actually see yourself as the reflection of the eternity outside of yourself. That's how you get to have that conversation with that. And for me, it appeared to me as a God being that I was talking to, and I didn't know it was me. And now I'm certain that the thing I was talking to is me, but it's this higher self. It's this true self. And I finally understand what a lot of magicians are talking about when they say true will, because the will of this thing, which is the real us, is the true will. And as you get more in touch with it and you start to become this true self, as opposed to the ego complex that we usually mistake for us, you start to experience your true will. You'll look at a situation and be like, have a desire from the body that says, I want this or that. But then this true will be like, we don't need that. And that stuff comes in over top and overrides the kind of human impulses. Now, does it always stop things? No. It feels a little more like there's been a deal with this body to experience its life for growth, and that the body has its own functions and desires and stuff separate from the self that you just have to deal with. But you feel yourself separate. It's weird. And to the point where I've experienced now also what people talk about in astral travel, where they can see their body from the outside. All of these things are things that I'd taken very metaphorically in the past. And over this 6 months of doing a lot of daily work, I have been able to experience some of it. So now my mind's a little like, oh, okay. Now I see why people call it these things, why they use these words, why these terms were the ones used. Now on the channel, I've never given you any reason to need any of that information, because we've only talked about other ways to look at it. So again, nothing really new to discuss, just a realization in me of why things were the way they were. Why did they use the elements as a great example of the combination making up spirit and what you really are? Now that makes sense to me. A bunch of things just make sense now in a way that they didn't before. And I guess that's the entirety of the experience, more or less. It's just a better knowing, a better understanding of why things are the way they are, why these practices use the terminology they use, things like that. So while that's all very interesting to me, and it probably would be interesting to some of you who've experienced it and just want that experience of saying like, oh, I know that, it's a validation for me that you had the same feeling, etc. I'm not going to do all that. I'm not making videos on any of that stuff. I just don't feel a desire to do it. And that's also been part of this. Ever since I went through this process of trying to get rid of the ego and having it get replaced with sort of a lesser, it's almost like the ego still exists, but it's like no longer the one in control. Ever since I've gone through this process, I just don't have the drive to come on here and talk about this stuff. It's good enough for me to have a journal. And that's a weird thing for me. I've always been a person in the past who sought more validation from outside and needed help. And you guys have been wonderful and great with that stuff. You guys have always come in not only with validation, but also recommendations of things to read, recommendations of places to go, and really help my journey work. There are people that watch my channel or that watched my old channel that said, I got them into this stuff, and I helped them. But just as much as I've helped other people, you guys have helped me to form my own ideas and identity and follow my path. And to find the real truth, which is that all of this is about accepting the true self and accepting reality as it is, adapting and transforming and growing. That's the purpose behind all of this magic stuff. And so I understand that now at a level where I'm like, wow, this is amazing. And it's gotten to the point where my life is just daily feels like stuff is just wonderful, magical. Even unemployed and worried about losing your savings and all this stuff, I still have felt joy and wonder and beauty in the world continuously because of all the experiences I've had and the practices I've had because of what I would call enlightenment experiences and things like that. It's just amazing if I look back at myself 10 or more years ago and realize that's not who I used to be. And so these types of things, again, really personally important. Not really any lessons to teach to others except hang in there. Eventually you get there, you feel this feeling, and you'll be like, oh, wow. But I finally understand true will. And true will is what that higher self wills to be true. And the higher self, for lack of a better way to put it, feels like it's on another plane. Like it has a better idea of what is going on here and why you're alive in the first place. But yet that information isn't shared exactly. It's like when you're in the state of feeling like you're that and being that in full, you can understand it all. But the instant you come back to experiencing the body, you still know you are that thing experiencing the body, but you have allowed yourself to forget in order to experience what you need to experience here. That's what it feels like. And I never really started out as one of those people who's like, we're here for a reason, or there's definitely an afterlife, or any of that stuff. But now I get it. Now I get why people believe that because of what I've experienced. Now, is that stuff real? Is there an afterlife? Is this thing on another plane? Literally? I don't know. I'm not dead. I'm not going to know that for sure till I'm dead. But I understand why that terminology is used now because I've experienced what makes you go, yeah, that seems right. And so that's, wow, I mean, it's been a tremendous experience. And so on the one hand, leaving my old job, which I left for moral reasons, was quite a hard thing to do. And quite a difficult 6 months to scrape by, but everything I've gained during that time feels like it was worth the price. And the new job I have feels like it's going to be something that allows me to continue to progress in a very good way. It's going to be a much better position than I had. It's going to be room for me to grow, and I'm excited about it. So celebration is in order. Your boy has a new job. Your boy experienced some crazy experiences in the spiritual side of things. Let's raise a glass. Mine is water now. I've been sober for 2.5 years now. Mine is water now. But drink whatever you're going to drink. This video is not really about teaching a lesson. It's more about saying, here's where I'm at for those who care. And this was, like I've said before, this channel is staying around. I don't have anything to share because I don't feel compelled to share. But if I do feel compelled to share, if something happens that's so earth-shatteringly like, wow, I got to tell you guys this thing, I will make a video about it. That is my promise to you. So who knows? You might get a video a year. You might get a video a month, depending on what shit happens. But it really isn't an indication of what's happening with me. It's just an indication of whether I feel like something is video worthy. So I want to thank everybody for watching now and for all these years. And until next time, safe travels.